When Christmas Eve arrived, wrapped in glittering lights and hollow silence. And for the first time in his 46 years, Daniel Cross felt like a stranger inside his own life. He was a billionaire by every measurable standard. Glass towers bearing his name, headlines praising his ruthless brilliance, a calendar booked years in advance. Yet on this night, he sat alone in the back seat of his chauffeur-driven car, staring out at families laughing through frosted windows, feeling as though the world had quietly moved on without him. His wife had died 3 years earlier, taken by an illness that money could not negotiate with. His son had chosen to live overseas, bitter over a childhood spent waiting, and for a father who always said later. And now, Christmas, the one day meant to soften even the hardest hearts, pressed against Daniel's chest like a reminder of everything he had, lost and never replaced. He told the driver to stop the car near a modest neighborhood where decorations were handmade and lights flickered unevenly, unsure why he had spoken, only knowing that the silence of his penthouse would crush him if he returned. He stepped out into the cold, the smell of pine and cheap cocoa in the air, and walked with no destination, a powerful man reduced to wandering streets like a ghost of himself. A few blocks away, beneath a broken street lamp, a young woman named Elena adjusted the thin scarf around her neck and pulled her coat tighter around her small son. The coat was too big for her, a donation from someone kinder than most, but the sleeves swallowed her hands as she balanced grocery bags filled with little more than bread, soup cans, and a single chocolate bar she had splurged on after weeks of saving coins. She was 27, widowed by a factory accident that ended in an apology letter and no compensation. And she had learned the brutal math of survival quickly, how to stretch meals, how to smile so her child would not notice fear, how to swallow pride when asking for help. Christmas had once meant warmth and music and her husband's laughter echoing through their tiny apartment. Now it meant making magic out of almost nothing, because her son Leo still believed. And belief, she knew, was fragile. Lose it once, and it rarely returned the same. Daniel noticed them by accident. He had paused near a closed bakery, watching snow gather on the darkened windows, when he heard a child's laughter, soft, genuine, untouched by the world's cruelty. He turned and saw Leo spinning in small circles, pretending the snowflakes were stars falling just for him. While Elena scolded him gently, her voice tired but warm, Daniel felt something shift inside him, a faint ache he had buried beneath years of ambition. He followed at a distance, not fully aware of why, only that the sight of them stirred a memory of holding his own son's hand once. Long ago, before boardrooms replaced bedtime stories, Elena stopped at a small church that offered a free Christmas meal, 2 to 3 every year. The line was long, faces weary, but she greeted each person with quiet dignity. Daniel stood across the street, confusion and discomfort battling inside him. He had donated millions to charities like this, yet he had never stood in the cold waiting for soup. He had never known hunger that sharpened into fear. And yet here was a woman who had almost nothing, still kneeling to wipe snow from her son's boots, still whispering reassurances that everything would be okay. When the church doors opened, volunteers rushed to serve food, but supplies ran short. Near the end of the line, Elena realized there would be no dessert left for Leo. She looked at the boy, then down at the chocolate bar in her bag. Without hesitation, she broke it in half, handing him the larger piece, smiling as though it were the greatest gift in the world. Leo's eyes lit up like he had been given treasure. Daniel felt his throat tighten. He had once spent more on a bottle of wine than that chocolate bar cost. Yet he could not remember the last time anything had brought him that kind of joy. As the volunteers apologized, Elena thanked them anyway, bowing her head with grace that humbled him. Outside, the wind grew colder, and Leo shivered. Elena took off her coat and wrapped it around her son, ignoring the way her hands shook from the cold. Daniel took a step forward before he realized what he was doing. He hesitated. Billionaires were not meant to interfere, not meant to expose themselves to the raw edges of life, but something stronger than habit pulled him. Across the street, "Excuse me," he said, his voice unsteady. Elena looked up, instinctively protective but polite. Daniel gestured to Leo. "I have an extra scarf in my car. It's warmer than that." Elena studied him for a moment, reading sincerity in his eyes, then nodded. "Thank you," she said simply. Daniel retrieved the scarf and wrapped it around Leo's neck, surprised at how natural the gesture felt. The boy smiled at him without reservation, and that smile cracked something open in Daniel that had been sealed for years. They talked for a few minutes about the snow, about how Christmas felt different this year. Elena never asked who he was or what he did. She never complained. She simply spoke of hope, of making the best of what they had. When Daniel offered to drive them home, she hesitated, then accepted for Leo's sake. Inside the car, warmth filled the space. But Daniel felt exposed in a way no board meeting had ever made him feel. He listened as Elena spoke about teaching Leo to be kind, about believing that goodness still mattered even when life was unfair. As they arrived at her small apartment building, Daniel realized something terrifying and beautiful. For the first time in years, he did not feel alone. He watched Elena guide Leo inside, watched the hallway light flicker as the door closed, and stood there long after, snow settling on his shoulders. That night, in a quiet neighborhood far from his three towers of glass, Daniel Cross witnessed something no amount of wealth had ever shown him, that love given freely, even in poverty, held a power capable of changing everything. Christmas morning dawned quietly, the kind of stillness that made every sound feel sacred, and Daniel Cross woke in his penthouse, surrounded by luxury that suddenly felt unfamiliar, almost foreign. The city stretched beneath him in glittering lines, but instead of pride, he felt an ache, a pull toward a small apartment, where a mother and her child had shown him a kind of wealth he had never learned how to earn.